Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme we'll be looking at the battle of the games consoles, at the modern-day slave trade, and talking to screenwriter Sean Slovo. But first, Europe. It's exactly 50 years this week since the Treaty of Rome was signed to establish what was then called the Common Market and is now named the European Union. In the intervening half-century, Europe has massively both widened and deepened in a way that was considered unstoppable. But now it all seems a trifle messier. A treaty setting up a European constitution was signed 3 years ago, but then blocked by referenda in France and the Netherlands. Now that constitution sits in a sort of limbo, with no clear direction for the future of Europe. Well, joining me right now to review all of this is the European External Trade Commissioner, Peter Mandelson. Peter, welcome, and first of all, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Europe and the whole of the European Union, I accept your good wishes. And many more of them.
Exactly, another lot in 50 years' time. How much do you think of the credit for 50 years of peace in Europe goes to the common market, the European Union, or was it more the nuclear deterrent?
Well, I think we signed war away when we created the European community. I mean, through steel and coal and through the economic integration, we made war more and more unlikely and then impossible. And I think that having done that, then to provide this tremendous motivating force for the reunification of Europe as a whole, East and West, I mean, that's a sort of, a double bounty. At long last, we have peace on our continent after many centuries of war and strife, but we also have our unity, unity underpinned by values of democracy and freedom for the first time across the whole continent. So I think we've made some small contribution.
Right, a more than small contribution. But Jacques Delors said recently, he said that unlike 50 years ago, where Europe was united in the process of trying to bring together the reconciliation of Europe and so on, that there's no such overarching theme for people to respond to today. And that's one of the reasons why Europe may have to reinvent itself.
Well, Europe no longer needs to be focused, or should be focused, simply on Europe. And I think that's where Jacques Delors, great man that he is making a mistake. I think he now has to go global, because the real challenges and issues that we face in Europe are not simply European issues and challenges. I mean, ones of global competitiveness in the global economy in which we're seeking to compete, issues of global warming and climate change, economic migration, energy security, proliferation of nuclear weapons. These are all global issues, and what we're doing is leveraging our strength, our combined strength as a European Union, in order to confront those issues and those challenges with continental-sized strength, and also finding continental-sized partners with whom to work in the world. Now, so the world, I think, has moved on since Jacques Delors' time, and I think that he needs to take if I may respectfully suggest, a slightly broader view of Europe's role in the world.
At the same time, Peter, the situation we have now, like we mentioned about the Constitution and so on and so forth, is Europe today, the project, is Europe in fact fit and well and healthy, or is it in a bit of a midlife crisis?
I don't think it's in a midlife crisis, because I think that it is, exercising the role and the responsibilities both in sustaining and strengthening the single market. It's after all the largest single economic space and trading bloc in the world we have in Europe, and we're doing very well out of that. Our European companies are drawing strength. They're better able to compete in global markets as a result of the strength they get from the existence of the single market. And I think in other areas we're turning to new challenges and new priorities. What we need to do though was to bring our rule book up to date. And there we seem to have experienced more difficulty. We've grown in size from what were 15 members to 27, yet our rulebook hasn't changed to match. Now, that was the point of the treaty that was proposed and which was defeated in referenda in France and the Netherlands, as you said. We've got to find a new version of that and represent it, and I hope with better luck next time.
Well, and I suppose in the meantime a two-tier Europe is looking to be inevitable, really.
No, I don't think you can make that assumption. I think those who feel that Europe is so big and diverse that there has to be an inner core and an outer perimeter, I think are wrong for this reason. First of all, each European Union member state is equal. I mean, after all, they each have their member of the European Commission, as Britain has in me. They have a voting power that reflects their size and their weight. All these things work in a reasonable way, although they could be improved. And I think to think that we could have a sort of two-speed Europe, an inner and outer, I think that defeats the whole point and the purpose of leveraging our combined strength, which we need as a 27 member strong union to have that weight and impact in the rest of the world.
Would you like there to be more than 27? Would you like there to be 30 or 40? Or would that be too many? Would you stop somewhere?
I don't want to draw an arbitrary line, but when people ask that question, what they sometimes mean is, would you like to see Turkey in membership? Yeah. Because that is the country that has generated the most controversy. Yeah. Well, I would be very happy to see Turkey, as long as Turkey continues reforming in the way that it is, guided and inspired very much by the prospect of becoming a member of the European Union. But Turkey is undertaking the same sort of political and social revolution that it did all those decades ago, when it became the modern Turkey. And I would like to see...
what about Russia?
I'd like to see our market swelled and underpinned in that way. Russia, well, I think we're more likely to see Russia anchoring itself in Europe, rediscovering its European vocation, as I would like it to do, and also finding its economy increasingly progressively integrated with that of the European single market. I think that's a more likely prospect than becoming a formal member of the European Union. Indeed, as Trade Commissioner, I hope to embark on that very negotiation with Russia with that view in mind.
Do you think when Angela Merkel says that her main priority is to resuscitate the flagging constitution and so on, and Margaret Beckett says that's going to be an uphill struggle, would you agree with Margaret about that?
It depends what Chancellor Merkel is seeking to do. If she's seeking to simply represent the same treaty that was previously rejected, I think that would be hard going, because I don't see how you would justify not having a referendum again in France and the Netherlands, and I think it would be difficult to get a different answer. But I think that we have to instead look to a version of the treaty which is suitable for the purpose that is required, and that is certain more limited institutional changes, reforms of the way in which we do our business and take our decisions. For example, I would like to see an external relations personality, somebody who combines the weight of our member states with the tools and instruments of the Commission. And people call that a European foreign minister. I don't call it a European foreign minister, but I call it a single personality who can represent and project what Europe is about and what we want in the world more effectively than the arrangements we have at the moment.
Yeah, so that what's needed is a sort of almost a brand new document.
Brand new document, but tailored to specific purposes, without perhaps some of the grandiose constitutional language that some people objected to in the first version.
Do you think, gazing into your crystal ball, that Britain will ever join the single currency or not now?
I don't rule it out. I hope it will be the case, because I think that we will benefit economically from that. I also think that the European Eurozone, the single currency, will perform better with Britain taking up its place at the decision-making table, the ministerial table that is associated with the single currency. I think we need it and they need us, but I wouldn't put a date on it.
Right. Back here in Britain, one thing that is a date has been put on is the transfer of power from Tony Blair to his successor this year. Are you still a member of the Labour Party, or did you have to give that up?
No, I'm still a card-carrying member of the Labour Party, as I have been all my adult life.
And so you'll be
New
free
Labour.
to... Pardon? New
Labour.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jim Callan always resolutely said Labour. I'm a member of Labour. But yes, New Labour. But so in terms of what's coming up, I mean, would you prefer... I know Gordon said some time ago that he said he'd prefer a contest, but that's months ago. Would you prefer a contest now, or do you think it's got to the point where it should be, quote, a coronation?
Well, you know, my preference is neither here nor there. I mean, in this sense, I'm only an individual party member. Do I think the party would benefit from a contest? Yes, I do. Do I think whoever was elected would benefit from having a contest? Certainly. I think the prospect of a coronation is off-putting to the public. But, you know, you can't sort of, you know, fabricate or sort of, through some artificial manipulation suddenly create a contest out of somewhere. It requires more than one person who wants the job, more than one serious person who wants the job. And that remains to be seen. I think we'll only know that when the Prime Minister steps down, and that's not going to take place tomorrow.
And in fact, in terms of what comes next, what's the most important quality this Prime Minister, who's in the wings at the moment, needs?
A very keen, modern sense of what is in Britain's national interest. And that includes, by the way, being a full member of the European Union and exercising influence in the European Union. Why? Because that's how we multiply our national strength in Europe and in the world, through the organisation of the European Union. So I'd like to see a strong commitment there. But what people want to see in their Prime Minister is somebody who takes their country and its interests seriously and of paramount importance over everything else, of whichever party.
Did you think that Andrew Turnbull was a bit tough on Gordon Brown, talking about Stalinist ruthlessness and a cynical view of mankind and his colleagues and so on? Do you think that was... I mean, you've talked about it having all sorts of flaws and so on, but, I mean, did you think that was a bit strong?
It's slightly difficult for me to comment because I've been travelling out of the country all week, and actually I didn't read Andrew's comments in the newspaper in his interview. Look, he worked closely with Gordon Brown. He was his permanent secretary at the Treasury. He expressed himself from his own experience as he saw it. It's not for me to disagree or disagree. I think one should regard them as the views of one man. On the other hand, he was an important man, and therefore you can't simply brush his views aside. But you know, I think that you shouldn't necessarily judge Gordon Brown as a future Prime Minister simply as how he has been or behaved as a Chancellor, because I think that were he to become Prime Minister, you know, the office maketh the man. And I think that he's perfectly capable of seeing his responsibilities in a broader way and the need to perhaps operate more inclusively, reaching out to more people in the way that he organised his life as Prime Minister, should he become Prime Minister. And
do you hope he'll be the winner of this contest, if there is one? I mean, would you like him to be Prime Minister?
It depends on the choice, doesn't it? I mean, you know, you're presented with a choice, a number of individuals, and you say who will be the best. You can't yet tell me who the field is going to be, can you?
No. But
so you can't really ask me the question.
Well, no, you might well say that, on the other hand, that you can't dismiss there may be an opponent out there, is what you're saying, who is more qualified than Gordon Brown.
It's possible. It's possible. Everything is possible theoretically, and that's about as far as I'm going to go in answering this line of questioning.
Well, one thing, of course, that's interesting is with Tony Blair having said he's going to step down by July, that means that because you're there for another 2 years in Brussels...
I'm there until November 2009.
Yeah.
That's
so
my fixed mandate.
Yeah. So that means that you will be in office for 2 years after Tony, which is going to be quite an odd feeling, because, what, he's going to be advising you for a change?
Yes, he advises me now already, actually, because he's very strongly committed to the World Trade Talks, in which I'm engaged week in, week out. And they're very important for the world, and they're very important that they're brought to a successful conclusion, not least for the developing countries who stand to gain the most from a successful round. And so he's very committed to that, and he gives me his advice from time to time. And I suspect he'll be there around to do the same. What I don't think he'll be doing is sitting on his successor's shoulder and popping up all the time, giving domestic advice about British politics. I think, knowing Tony Blair as I do, I would judge that that would be the last thing he would think was appropriate to do. So he'll probably be more on the world stage hovering over me and giving me advice than he is domestically sitting on his successor's shoulder.
And could you, when that spell ends, could you ever see yourself re-entering British politics?
I don't know. I would like, after my term is over in 2009, to continue to make a contribution to public life, because that's what I've been doing all my life. So it would seem strange to stop. If I made a contribution in Britain, it would be as a former European Commissioner who was able, I think, to make the case and to offer a rationale for support, strong support for the European Union in the 21st century, because I think we need it more than ever.
Or you could, of course, go back to being the MP for Hartlepool.
I could go back to the people from whence I came.
Exactly.
Back to Hartlepool. And it
Peter,
would be a privilege, should they have me.
Exactly. Thank you very much indeed,
Thank you.
Peter. In a moment, I'll be discussing the strange murder of Pakistan's cricket coach. Join me after the break.